All right, well, welcome back. This is part 2 for week 3, and we're looking at from ideologies to new imperialism. And let's get into it. In our last video, we finished on the question, why was this resurgence in imperialism? Why did that pick back up again? Why did that start all over again in the 1880s, 1890s? What fueled that? And that's the topic of this week's lesson, or this particular video. How do we go from this to this? How do we go from this in Africa, where only about 10% of African land was under European control in 1870, to this, where 90% is controlled by Europeans by 1913? What in the world happened? Well, we got to look at some of the things that were happening during this time, during that lull period. During this lull period, as countries looked inward and were building themselves up, superpowers were being created. And the industry, the Industrial Revolution that took place in the earlier part of the 1800s and then sort of saw itself again emerge later in the 1800s, it really started focusing on a lot of new military, new power facilitating types of invention and creativity. This one was at this time was sort of like this new military revolution. It was like a second military revolution. But this time, it came in the form of like breech loading rifles. Remember back in the day, you turn your rifle upside down, your musket, and then you'd put your charge in and slam it up and down and then charge it, and then you can go get up and fire. Well, these were now breech loading, which means you put the charge in the back. Now you just open it up, put it in, close it, and it's ready to go. There's no more manipulation, and the speed of being able to fire these rifles was much, much faster. Same thing with artillery. Artillery became breech loading too. Rather than ramming the cannonball down the front of the cannon, now everything came to the back of the cannon. You open it up and you put it in. And we'll see a couple pictures like that in just a moment. But not only did they have better artillery mechanics, but they also had advances in chemistry, so that the chemistry was now better. The charge was more powerful. The ability for when the artillery, the iron, whatever, hit whatever it was going to hit, there were chemical changes in that charge, in that blast, that made it much more lethal. That was like a big advancement there. There was also the emergence of the iron warship, where it's no more sails and wood with these sort of like front-loading kind of cannons poking out of holes in the side. No. We had breech-loading artillery cannons along the side, and the thing is built out of iron. We have steam engines inside, so we're faster. We're not dependent on wind. We have better maneuverability. And the idea of the sail was pretty much gone at this point. But also another one that was very subtle during this time was the advancement of communication. Now if I'm commanding a force, I have much faster transmission time of communications. Hey, I need you to move over here. Hey, what's going on over here? What's happening with the enemy lines over in here? I can get that information and coordinate my military, my forces much quicker, much more effectively than I did before. When I got to give a message to a guy on a horseback, he's got to run a couple miles over there, get it, somebody's got to write it, and they have to travel back. That was a long process. So communications is a big deal here. And what this created a new situation. So again, you have this situation, it creates opportunity at this time. There is this second military revolution. Powerful countries are becoming astronomically more powerful through this second military revolution. And what happens is the world's people become so much more imbalanced. The stronger are incredibly stronger. The weaker are almost without hope of being able to stand up to any of these big deals, these big countries. Here are some of them. So the one on the top with the elephants, those cannons in the front, those are breech loading, back loading types of weaponry. The gentleman here that's sitting in front of that thing, that is the invention of the machine gun, able to go over and shoot hundreds of rounds in a minute. The ship on the bottom, that's the Japanese, one of the first Japanese ironclad warships. If I were to blow that up, you would see that along its side, it has those breech loading cannons as well. So this new power brings about two temptations, shall we say, or two opposing forces. One is the temptation. I'm all powerful. I can take whatever I want, particularly if that area is weak. That's the temptation. That's there. We got to acknowledge that. There are those who are greedy and hungry for power and just want their own deal. But there's also in this time frame a sense of moral duty. I'm the big brother. I'm stronger. There is a moral obligation, particularly under Christian countries, European countries, to take care of the weaker one. I should be watching out for him. I should be watching out for the underdog, the one that can't take care of themselves. So there becomes this tension at this time between whether or not we take kind of an evil advantage and start tearing up the world with our power, or do we step in and act as the world's big brother, kind of a policeman who's able to come along and put right wrongs and protect those who can't protect themselves. Both of these are going to play out in the 1880s, 1890s. Along with this tension, there's also the idea of national identity. We talked about this last time. National identity and survival of the fittest. So who are we and how can we be better? How are we going to be able to survive in this world where everybody's competing to get better and stronger? My neighbor is now able to blow me up twice as much as I can blow them up, so maybe I ought to go over and put more focus on getting bigger bombs, more bombs, or find some other way to go over and put them out of danger's reach. What about raw materials? Do I have raw materials? Do I have enough raw materials to maintain and keep this momentum going, this power? Can I support my nation? Markets, I need markets. I need to be able to find trade. All those start to play into this new power dynamic as well. But there's also this sense of fear, real fear, international fear is starting to creep up. A lot of this what if. What if France gets more than we do? What if Russia takes over the Ottoman Empire? How can we do our best to maintain the balance of Europe? Right? Which is sort of ridiculous. Since when you're not wanting balance, you want supremacy. You want to be the top dog. You want to be the one that has no threat to you. So a lot of this is coming into play 1880s, 1890s. Naval forces. That's another big one that kind of emerges at this time. Previous years, they proved that you need to have a strong military. Whether it was the Crimean War, whether it was any of the other battles, whether it be in the United States or otherwise, you needed to have that strong army, or Navy. You needed to be able to move troops quickly. You needed that power. And as I said, ironclad warships were become massively produced during this time. This is that same Japanese ship, by the way. And as I said, there's this growing sense of there's a moral duty. I have a moral duty to take care of my fellow citizens. One example of this is in India with Britain. Britain kind of developed at least part of its colonization of India through missionaries. And one of these things, this actual portrait here is a portrayal of the Indian sati. If a gentleman husband died, no matter what his age, he died, then the living wife would actually be burned alive as part of their religion and religious rites. And the Christian missionary, the European, saw this as a need to protect women in this society. So they felt it was their moral duty to step in and try to rectify, change that culture. It does get changed. It does become abolished much later, but it's still an issue. And so there's that moral duty. I have a moral responsibility to take care of those who can't take care of themselves. Two other people, one being William Carey. He was kind of the humanitarian that goes into India. He helped to go over and reverse and kind of bring down and learn or teach the people, the natives, of a better way in his mind. David Livingstone is very famous to most of us for his adventures and his work in Africa. His humanitarian cause, his reason for going there was to end the slave trade. Because in these regions of Africa, the Muslim people were still very, very rapidly selling human stock, if you want to call it that. So that's what he was going down. Both were missionaries. Both were bringing a Christian sort of worldview and hoping to bring a different ideology into a different part of the world. There was also during this time a kind of a cultural shift, and since this class deals with not only historical but also the literature that sort of follows during this time, this is one of those things that pops up. Culturally speaking, there was a big emphasis on manliness and adventure and what that looks like out in the frontier, out in the pioneer kind of folk. And two authors that are pretty well known is H. Rider Haggard. He did King Solomon's Mine, and then Jules Verne with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 80 Days Around the World. 80 Days Around the World? Around the World in 80 Days? So these are all about the strong man, the frontier man. Alan Quatermain, it was a central character to Haggard novels. He was the rough and tough guy who kind of John Wayne-ish, Indiana Jones kind of guy that goes out and he's going to bring civilization to the natives, to the savages, and that was very popular. It was people liked that sort of dream. Even newspapers and little penny papers that do the little cartoons and stuff, they always ran these adventure stories and things like that to spark the imagination and to kind of get people to realize, hey, this is what we're doing out there way over yonder. We're not just there for greed, we're there because we want to bring that humanitarian change. These are manly men who are out there doing manly things, that type of stuff. So what comes up next? What are we looking at next? That's where we're at. That's kind of the mind frame. That's the things that are feeding the minds. Now we got to go over and step into, okay, well, what sort of things happened? We got the domino effect. This is the beginning. People want that humanitarian kind of cause. They want to feel good about what they're doing. They feel the moral duty. They feel the moral need. They sense that diversity between the strong and the weak. Somebody's got to take care of those. Somebody's got to protect. And so somebody's going to come along and go beep on the dominoes, and the dominoes are going to start falling. And when the dominoes start falling, it's going to start branching into bigger and bigger and bigger, and nobody's going to be able to stop it. Some of it might be seen as something good. But in this case, it's going to turn out really, really bad. I'll see you next video.